Good morning. I'm Mary Winters. I'm the owner of About Senior Solutions. We provide direction and support and a relief for families when they have some real stressful situations with their older adults and loved ones. I have my coffee here, or actually it's tea. I would say coffee, even though it's in a coffee mug, but it's tea. We have a great program. We have a wonderful lady who is who's already turned 100, and they want to continue celebrating her. So we'll talk a little bit about June in June today, who's 100, and we'll have a caregiver question from Steve McCullough. And I also have longtime friend and specialist in estate planning attorney Daryl Brook on with us today. So we'll have some fun topics, and he's going to make sure that you get some tips on what to include and who to really include in your estate planning. And I think that's super important. So I'm glad he's on with us today. So let's go ahead and we'll reach out and see if we can find our little June. All right, well, we have June, and June is just turning 100. Here is a picture of her. I think she's beautiful. I can't believe she's 100. I'm always looking at these seniors who are 100 years old and thinking they cannot be 100 years old. So let me go ahead and tell you a little bit about her. The local paper who apparently delivers her paper, has been delivering her paper for years. Jack Mitchell wrote this little article on her and also provided these photos. And she is uh, actually turned 100 on April 12th. And he said, it may seem like another day to others, but for us at the Ledger Dispatch, we will be celebrating you every day, June. And he realizes that COVID-19 made it really difficult to have these celebrations, so he wants to continue to celebrate her. He thinks today and every day is something that we need to support her, and having a distant celebration or a close by celebration, he just wants to make sure you're acknowledged. And everybody from the staff over at the Ledger just loves you. The community loves you. Happy birthday, June Chegwig. And I think I don't know. I just think she just has so much wonder, spirit and energy. It's just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. So let's go on and we'll ask our caregiver question. Unfortunately, Steve is not able to join us this morning, but we'll go ahead and we'll move forward with a question. All right, so Steve isn't here today, but he did send me the question that he received from Melanie in, I think it's actually really close in San Marino, California. And she has an issue, not an issue, but she has a concern for her sister who is out in Oklahoma, and she has earlier stages dementia, and her husband is 20 years older than her and having trouble trying to care for her. So they are trying to make a decision whether she should stay in Oklahoma or she should move out here with family in the San Marino area. So to your question, should you? I think we would love to put facts together and find out a little bit more about what her situation is. What does her husband really want to do? Is he wanting to be able to be near her? And then, of course, we would have to think about all of her resources and transferring those, whether it's her physicians or her health care, any of the additional resources. But I know family would more than likely, I know from your comments, you would love to have her here. So let me even look at, I'm just going to present this little wheel that we use too for planning. I thought this might be helpful also in your question. We look at what you as a family, a larger family, and the husband may want for her, what's going to keep her safe, and what kind of a budget do you have to work for. And when we put all three of those together, we're really able to put a plan together moving forward. So I hope that little bit helps. You're welcome to call us if you have any more questions. And in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and we'll present Daryl Brook. Hold on just a minute, though. I'm going to go ahead and show you this little mini commercial we put together. All right, let me go ahead and introduce my friend Daryl Brook. He is a certified specialist in estate planning and a probate and trust lawyer. And the State Bar of California has had him covered with this specialization since 1997. He's been specializing in that. He has his own practice right in the heart of Monrovia, and actually right next door to my office, right there on Myrtle Avenue. Join us on a Friday night during the street fair. In any event, he's very philanthropic. He's been very supportive of the community too. And so he served on the advisory board for the Rose Bowl Legacy Foundation, and a former president of the Pasadena Quarterbacks. He was instrumental in creating the first ever standalone Rose Bowl Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which was a lot of fun. He's also the past president of the Monrovia Rotary Club and past treasurer and board member of the Pasadena Playhouse for the last 6 years. And he was very involved with the Levitt Pavilion in LA, at MacArthur Park, as well as Memorial Park in Pasadena. They put on at least 50 free concerts a year, and amazing performers there. Rita Coolidge, Carla Barnhoff, Jimmy Webb, Los Lobos, amazing performers. And among some of his other civil responsibilities, he served 2 terms as president of the Old Pasadena Business and Professional Association and a member of the Sierra Madre Planning Commission. And he served as legal counsel for the Monrovia Historic Preservation Group, providing legal advice for that community's historic preservation movement. And he's done some interesting things too. We have that fair in Monrovia, and he negotiated a contract with the U.S. Postal Service to secure the WPA Bear mural, formerly displayed in the old Monrovia Post Office in the community room of the Monrovia Public Library, rent-free in perpetuity. He is very supportive of the arts, and something that I've always appreciated about what he does. So let me go ahead and we will have Mr. Brook on with us. And let's see here. Come on. And let's see, here we go. How are you this morning?
Good morning, Mary. I'm wonderful. How are you?
Good. I hope I did you justice with your intro.
I'm excited just hearing about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I really do appreciate everything that you do for the arts, and it's always fun to talk about what you're involved in. So I'm glad that we're getting back to having more music in our world too. So I'm sure you'll be very involved in that as we
Absolutely. I've got a 100-year-old question for you. Issue to kind of talk to you about as well. My grandmother was 103.
Really?
And I asked her one time, I said, so Grandma, what do you attribute your longevity? And it was one word: dancing.
Oh.
And so I took that to heart, and I became a Zumba instructor. And I did that for about 7 years. And I really attribute that to my 103-year-old grandmother, who inspired me by her longevity to pick that up and kind of pass on that art of dancing to other people. So it's amazing what we can do with ourselves to kind of increase our longevity.
Oh, absolutely. Music is incredible. My grandmother played the organ and piano and taught music. She taught music into her 80s.
Wow.
She taught herself how to play the harp at 82. And she didn't quite make 100, but almost. And I think music was a big contributor to her longevity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So, incredible. But tell me more about being a specialist as a estate planning attorney.
Well, it's interesting. I was giving a seminar in San Francisco back in the 90s, and one of the participants came up to me and said, have you thought about becoming a certified specialist? And I thought, well, it sounds great. I don't think I really need it, but she said, you go ahead and you should take the exam. So I did. I actually got my application in like right before the deadline was up. And it was back in 1997 at a time when it was just starting out with the process. So I didn't really study for it. I just showed up and took the exam and I passed it. And I find that it's really helping for me to hone my skills as a specialist. I'm set up to a higher standard of practice and care. So that's been an inspiration for me to kind of continue in my longevity, my practice here in Monrovia. So I think it's been a great reward. I'm up for renewal in a couple of years, and I think I'll renew it again and keep on doing it until I'm hopefully 103.
There you go. That's great.
So
So I know we wanted to talk, or you really wanted to focus a little bit on having the right decision makers in your estate planning. And I think that really is important. People don't really think about how conflicting it can be to have multiple decision makers, or if you don't have any family, that's just not putting a plan together at all because you don't think you have somebody to assist you. So let's talk a little bit about how you focus on that.
well, I think I start out with being under the logo of be careful what you wish for, it might come true. We have situations where we have people, ourselves, let's talk about myself. We have people in our lives, in our universe, that we would be selecting naturally, like family members, close family members, or trusted ones who we think would be viable candidates to handle our affairs during our incapacity or upon our death. And so we go into this preconceived notion that these are the right people I have in place who will carry out my wishes. And sometimes that's a good idea. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
And I think we're living in a very litigious society right now where people who are expecting to receive something from an estate or worried about somebody's medical health or property management will come in and say, well, I've got a better idea. I think somebody else can do a better job. So we're seeing a lot of litigation, a lot of contests as far as people trying to assert their own values and their own wishes on the individual's estate plan, and that's where the rubber hits the road. Kind of sitting back and realizing what's really important.
Oh, I know. I'm working in a situation right now where the older adult about 5 years ago decided he wanted to be a full code, and what that means, I don't think everybody knows what that means. It's everything. I want full resuscitation. I'll take the tubes. I'll take the life support. I want everything. He changed that from what is known as a do not resuscitate or DNR and just go ahead and let me go naturally. And there's been some conflict now that he can't change his mind, and he's approaching hospice, and people are kind of wanting to change that decision making for him. And it was nice because the attorney stepped up and said that's not what's in his paperwork. So I'm sure families probably go back to you too and say, what do we do about this? Or I think we should do such and such. And you're really there to defend the position that your client made with you, I don't know, maybe 10, 25 years ago, and make sure that their wishes are fulfilled, right?
And I think all these issues are finally resolved in the great mediator and arbitrator in the sky, and that's the probate court.
Yeah.
And the probate court, they're the ones who kind of make the final decisions. If one person has one idea and the one who's named in the documents as the fiduciary has another idea, then these disputes are always resolved whether it's a probate court, conservatorship proceedings. That's when there's issues as far as healthcare, who has the right to make those decisions, who has the priority to make those decisions. These all kind of come about, and that's resolved finally in the probate court. And whether it's trust, probate estates, conservatorships, it's whenever there is an issue as to who's running the show, those disputes are normally resolved in probate court at very much expense, something that we as individuals didn't expect going into when we created our estate plans. We thought, well, wait a second, I didn't plan for this. I thought I had the right people in mind and plan. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't.
I know. I sometimes kind of kid and say, when you're giving somebody the keys to your kingdom, it's kind of like giving away your golden Willy Wonka ticket to somebody who may not treat it very well. And I think it's kind of interesting too in planning. We see sometimes people worry more about themselves and what they're going to inherit versus
Exactly.
what they should be doing as far as the right thing for the person that they're supposed to be making decisions for.
Exactly.
I know you like to work with fiduciaries. Can you explain to our audience what a fiduciary is and a professional fiduciary?
Well, actually,
What they need to do?
fiduciaries itself, either if you have a will, then the executor is the fiduciary of your estate. If you have a living trust, then the trustee is the fiduciary of your trust assets. If you have a power of attorney or an advanced healthcare directive, the agent or the attorney, in fact, is the fiduciary. In a sense, the fiduciary is the party that kind of carries out your wishes that you've designated, whether it's property distribution, property management during your lifetime, or making healthcare decisions that you have directed the fiduciary to make. So they have different hats, but it's the same goal. The fiduciary is basically working for the primary benefit of the person who created the document, and also for the benefit of the beneficiaries of a will or a living trust. A fiduciary is basically the hired gun, but they basically work for the individual's estate plan and also for the intended beneficiaries.
So that could be kind of a thankless job, I would think, with a beneficiary saying, hey, you can't spend that money, or you shouldn't, or you have to, or we're going into court. But they know how to handle that.
And that's where the professional fiduciary comes in, because if you have individuals lined up who have been designated as the executor, the trustee, or the agent, and they realize, wait, I didn't sign up for this job. I'm not up for it. I'm just a simple person that can only handle my own affairs. They didn't know that they were nominated. So what they do is they basically say, this is over my head. I'm below that pay grade. Let's get somebody professional who is in the process of doing it. And that's where the professional fiduciaries come in. And that's where the parties benefit, because what they do is they bring the training, the expertise, and also the experience in handling disputed matters and making things move smoothly. I've been very fortunate to have worked with a number of wonderful professional fiduciaries, both on this side of the table and on the other side of the table. And I think it's the whole training aspect and having these people in line is probably the best thing that's ever happened to estate plans in California.
Yeah, I think it's really helpful for families too, and people who either don't have the time or it's just very overwhelming for them. Speak a little bit about the situations where people don't even know they're nominated. It might be a family member or a neighbor. I've seen someone's banker and then the secretary added as a second. Talk a little bit about some of those surprises and how they come up, and how you best support the client in walking through that decision-making process.
Well, my key to the whole situation is making sure these people know that they're going to be in place to discharge those duties. Whenever I have a client that come in to do an estate plan, I say, okay, you've nominated these people. Have you had a discussion with them about their potential future role in your estate will be? And they say, well, no, I haven't. I said, well, before you put your pen to the paper and sign these documents, I think that's a decision you need to have, a discussion you should have with these individuals. Make sure they know that they're going to be in place. And as long as there is an approval of that, if there's a recognition that there's going to be a responsibility, then we move forward. But again, individuals who are not used to being fiduciaries, they don't have the resources, they don't have the experience, they don't have the time or the patience to deal with somebody else's estates or healthcare decisions. And I actually have worked with a bank that was nominated as a successor trustee, and they said, look, we don't want to be involved with this because the primary beneficiary is a nutcase. We can't handle this. It's a big estate. We would normally take the case on, but we just can't really put ourselves to be in that situation. So what we did was we went to court and we named a professional fiduciary to step in as a successor trustee for the bank. So even a bank, you would think, well, they've got the resources, they've got the experience. They may not have the patience to deal with the beneficiaries, especially if whether it's one out of control beneficiaries, the sole beneficiary, or if it's a multitude of beneficiaries who can't get along, and they don't. It's to the point where they don't even pass Christmas cards to each other anymore. So it gets to that. So it's making sure you have the right people and the right institutions in mind, but also informing them this is what you have in mind and bringing them to the table before they are surprised with the fact that, oh, congratulations, you are now the trustee. This is your job.
What? I don't know that job. How about if somebody's willing to still do it, but they still need that professional support? What are the options for that individual?
Who needs professional support? I think it's what you, as an estate planner, what you can do is make recommendations saying, look, I really don't have anybody that I trust or I can handle this. Who do you recommend? And I'll have like a number of professional fiduciaries that I personally trust, I would trust with my estate.
Mm-hmm.
And I say I would recommend these people because they've got the experience. I give them their names and their phone numbers, and I say, please feel free to reach out to them and contact them, get to know them, take them out for coffee or for lunch, and get a feel for their expertise and get a comfort level so that when you are going to make your selection, you've made an informed decision. So it's something that we all have to kind of, we have to help these people who are not so knowledgeable kind of get to the point where they have the right people in place.
It's true. And then I know so often parents try to be fair with their children and have everyone involved. And I've seen often two decision makers, sometimes 3, 4, 5, 6, depending on how many children they have. How do those situations usually work out? I know they're always challenging, even in the best of situations, but tell me a little bit about some of those scenarios that you've encountered.
Well, sometimes it's not very pretty because it got to the point where mom liked you best.
Mm-hmm.
Or, our parents thought you would be, the best person to handle this. I personally disagree because I think I was the best child in the family. And so what you get is these internecine, these inter-sibling rivalries that kind of creep up. And that's when money's on the line. That's when they decide, look, I think I'm the better person who can run this. And that can be an issue. I had a recent situation, a court case where the court had named four individuals as co-trustees, one of whom was an outsider, a friend of the family, and 3 of them were siblings or representative of the share. And these were court-appointed fiduciaries. They were later removed because parts of the family didn't like what they were doing. They brought a contest, and we had to kind of deal with that to the point where we had a professional fiduciary come in to take over the show for them. So, even the best laid plans, even the best intentions, even if it's a court appointment where these people have already been vetted out and they've been, they know the experience, they end up on the sidelines saying, look, we're not the people for the job. So.
Yeah, and things just don't move forward too, because they all argue about what needs to be done. I've had situations like that where, come on, we need to make a decision. Mom needs to move from the hospital. We need to make a decision where she's going from here immediately. And it's really tough for a large group or more than one person who's a decision maker to really come up with that. The other thing I think is kind of interesting too is having a person who's strong enough to make the decisions when you have other family members who are control freaks, let's say, and want to kind of step over that decision maker. What kind of advice do you have for that fiduciary, that family member who is in charge, but they have someone else, usually a sibling, who is constantly just making it very complicated for them to make decisions or interfering with the decisions with the doctors and so forth? What kind of advice do you have for that family member who has that decision-making ability, but really is being kind of nudged by another family member?
I think in that situation, what I tell the fiduciary is refer all these resident contrarians who can think they can do a better job, have them call your attorney. If there's an issue with that, focus on the purpose at hand, making sure that the healthcare decisions are carried out, and refer all disputes or issues with that to the attorney and let that attorney handle that. And the attorney will get involved and discuss it with the contrarian or recommend to the contrarian that they get outside counsel to represent them to kind of explain the situation, because unless you've got the experience of dealing with healthcare decisions, perhaps you don't know what's behind the motive for making those directives. So it's best to have somebody with experience and knowledge representing that contrarian to kind of explain it to them. Because as the attorney for the fiduciary, my duties are to the fiduciary or to the fiduciary. Mine are not to the contrarian. I can inform them, but I can't advise them. So in that situation, I say, I think you may want to get counsel who can represent you and kind of explain these things to you and advise you and represent you.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Share a story with a difficult beginning and an excellent outcome. I know you've had several court issues and other things where maybe you're just in the planning process, you were able to really steer people in a better direction so that they had a good outcome.
Well, I've got an interesting situation going on right now, and I don't know what the outcome is going to be. I'm hopeful to be positive, but let me give you a background. We have an individual who passed away, and at the time of his death, it was unexpected. He did not have the time to put together an estate plan. He didn't have a will, didn't have a trust, didn't have any powers of attorney or advanced healthcare directives. He just basically passed away. And he passed away. He was in a loving relationship with a woman. They lived together, but they weren't domestic partners. They weren't registered domestic partners, and they weren't married. Together, they had a child who is 14 years old. And the decedent died with only, one heir, the child, who is a minor and can't basically represent his rights. So the family members, the siblings of the decedent, are now kind of getting together and trying to push the live-in girlfriend out of the picture. However, in situations like this, the probate code provides some authority and a priority to those who can serve as administrator of the estate if there is no designation. And in this situation, probate code section 8461 provides a priority, who has first priority. And of course, the surviving spouse has the first one, his first priority. The next, the children or issue have the second priority. Well, in this situation, we have a child who's 14 years old. Wow. So he's not quite able to be put in that situation. What we've done, though, with the girlfriend who's being pushed out, we've got a separate guardianship proceeding for her appointment as guardian so that she will step in and represent the minor and actually represent her boyfriend's estate in that situation. So that's where a situation where it seems like it's bad. The girlfriend and the kid have been pushed out, but now we can kind of reassert their priority and reclaim what's rightfully belonging to the child.
Yeah, that's terrible to think that a family would push the child out of the house just because they don't care for the girlfriend, maybe, or here's this little boy grieving with the loss of his father, and
right.
That's what they do. That's terrible. So I'm really glad that you were able to step in that situation. That's fantastic.
So stay tuned. We have court hearings coming up, and I hope it'll kind of move in our favor, and we'll see what happens. I'll have a better idea after we get the guardianship created in September, so I'll let you know.
Oh, great. You'll have to come back on and give us an update.
Absolutely. Love to.
I want people to be able to get a hold of you. Let's see. I have your contact information there. So if you're just listening and you are not able to see the scroll that we have down below, Daryl, why don't you give your phone number and your website information out, and that way people can get a hold of you if they need to.
Oh, well, my phone number is 626-303-1806. You can reach me on my cell phone, 626-354-2549. The website is www.monroviatrust.com. And anytime you want to, if anybody listening to this or watching this, they're visiting with Mary here in Monrovia, just come right down the hall because we've been neighbors for years.
I know, yeah.
And true story, when I first moved to Monrovia 22 years ago, one of the very first people I met was Mary Winters. She was like a friend. We met at the coffee shop right up the street here, a block away from our office. And she's my longest term friend here in Monrovia. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. It's a pleasure. And it's time flies, doesn't it? I mean, it's been, 25 years or more.
However, I think we look better now than we did 25 years ago.
We do.
Absolutely.
But I do need to get something that kind of buffs out the wrinkles a little bit. So one of these
You
days.
call it shaving for me.
All right. Well, have a great weekend, and
Thank you.
thank you for the work that you do. Appreciate that, and have a fabulous weekend. And we'll stay tuned and want to hear more about your client who's 14 and how you're protecting him.
Stay tuned.
All right. That sounds great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. All right, everyone. Have a fantastic weekend. We're going to go ahead and take off with our little message here.